Siam was a highly respected person. He made decisions based on group consciousness of family he represented. They were chosen by factors like status and respect within community, how much he exemplified characteristics of a noble person such as humility, respect, generosity, and wisdom. The Siam has been described as the best talker, not chairman. They said their people had no chairman, but man who was saying the most wise things. Social structure. It was similar to other Coast Salish peoples' classes were historically structured in manner more comparable to introverted here, nobility, aristocrats, and the like were the most populous, with commoners making a sizable but smaller portion of societies compared to nobility. The smallest group were slaves, held only by high-ranking nobles. The nobility was recognized by three key factors: wealth, especially the amount of wealth they distribute among the people; values, particularly to the degree which the values practiced by the person and family exemplify the values of the people; and knowledge, including both possessing and sharing knowledge of history, traditions, and culture, and knowledge of skills, whether practical or spiritual. Sharing wealth is highly regarded and practiced by most high-ranking and wealthy families. The distribution of wealth is a key component of the Potlatch gift-giving festival. It was encouraged through the display of values celebrated in the cultures such as generosity, humility, and respect. Some families were considered nobility because of their connection to spiritual powers or ceremonialism. Shamans, prophets, and medicine doctors were considered nobility because of the training and expertise they possessed. Some jobs or positions held by members of the community also signified members of this class. These positions were often related to mountain goat, like hunting or weaving of mountain goat wool blankets. In some values of the Squamish culture, respect for each other and generosity of both the wealth and wisdom of material wealth was key. Wisdom or knowledge was passed on through oral or visual teachings, being without means of transmitting it into writings but much time was spent by the aristocrats in imparting this knowledge to the youth. This was the responsible duty of the responsible elders. One practice historically done by the Squamish was a custom called flat foreheading. An infant's head would be placed on a wooden bust model of the head and shoulders to gradually alter the shape of the head into something more flattened in the forehead area. This shape was considered attractive and regarded as a sign of nobility. The last Squamish known to perform this practice was Tim Moody. The Squamish people used every part of the animals they hunted and the vegetation they harvested. They used sources from land animals to sea life and plants such as the game, deer, bear, elk, duck, swan, and small rodents like squirrel. Some of the ocean foods they hunted and harvested were mussels, sea eggs, cockles, clams, seaweed, herring, trout, urchin, sea lions, seals, and all type of salmon. Some of the land foods that they harvested were berries and plants such as wildberry, blackberry, salmonberry, salal and 5 different kinds of grass, and the roots of different plants. Also, bannock was eaten with almost every meal. The Squamish people started farming potatoes in 1827. Traditional foods are usually accompanied in the feast celebrating their indigenous culture. This event was banned and made illegal by the Canadian government from 1884 to 1895. Some of the different parts of the animals they used for other things other than eating. They used bones for soup stock, pipes, paintbrushes, tableware. The skulls of animals were used for masks, medicine, prayers, toys, and jewelry. The furs of animals such as marmots, mink, weasels, squirrels, and rabbits were used for clothing. Travel was primarily done by a canoe. Large cedar trees are cut down and carved into single cedar dugout canoes. Families would travel to different villages or nations to visit their relatives, or in the summer months, journey to resource-rich camping sites to gather food and materials for the colder winter months. In 1992, the construction and revitalization of the canoe culture came back when they constructed an ocean travel canoe. This canoe is measured at 52 feet and was carved from a single cedar tree. The Squamish kinship is based on a loose parental structure with large extended families and communal village life. Numerous villages populated the territory, with each village holding many longhouses. Each longhouse was a community in itself, with a number of related families living in the same home. The number of families varied with the size of the house. During the warmer seasons, around the times of gathering, there would be numerous fires within each house, often each for one family. During the winter season, one fire was used for ceremonies and spiritual work taking place in the house. The first recorded date of a person of European origin settling in the Squamish Valley was in 1874. When they came, they brought a lot of things to trade with the Squamish people. The native people supplied furs and received manufactured goods in return. This brought iron pails, durable fishing nets, metal tools, copper pots, and easily acquired blankets into their culture, but it also brought a rapid loss in the skills of tool manufacturing that they had developed over thousands of years. Hammer time! When you have reached puberty as a young woman or a young man, you would have a ceremony to celebrate your coming. Different families would have different celebrations and training. A young girl would inform her mother of her menstrual cycle, and the mother would then inform the father. The father would then call together the family, and they would discuss what tradition to practice on the young woman. One example is that the family would take 2 strands of the mountain goat wool and tie them to her head. The strand would be tied to each side of the forehead. The community would see this, signifying her new womanhood, announcing to her people that she is of age. For 4 days, she would fast with no food and limited or no water. During this time, she would refrain from bathing and being near fires. It was believed if she went near a fire, her skin would become red. After 4 days, she would bathe and become beautiful again. The purpose of these traditions was to make her bright and smart. A family member would drape a blanket over the woman's shoulders. After the meal, she would be painted with red ochre. She would travel to the forest and pull down cedar and spruce tree branches, rubbing the ends over her face and body. This would make her beautiful and charming in the eyes of men. She would give offerings of fern roots to those cedar trees. After all these were conducted, she would now be given an ancestral name, and the naming ceremony or the potlatch would occur. When a young man was of age, he would travel up a mountain and be one with nature for about 10 days. Historically, marriage would occur through either arranged marriage or the groom proposing to the father of his potential wife. If the father endorsed the marriage, he would invite the groom into his house after also conducting a test or trial on the young man. Only the wealthiest individuals practiced polygamy. The potlatch was the most studied event. Squamish potlatches were very different from the northern tribes and their festivities. Large feasts and the community, nation, or neighboring nations are invited to them. Highly wealthy families and individuals hosted these potlatches. They would share resources and wealth with the guests. Celebrated birth, coming of age, naming ceremonies, marriage, or memorial events occurred with potlatches. The winter season was when the most potlatches would occur. Summers were used for traveling and harvesting. Blankets would be brought or made and given to the guests. The host would hire a speaker for the family. A young woman, sometimes the daughter of a highly respected man, would be placed on top of a mound of blankets. Sitting on top of the blankets, a ceremony would take place around her. Large potlatches would be held in the longhouses. Naming customs are ancestral or hereditary naming. When a child is born, the elders of the family or the community would choose a name for him or her. This name is not their actual name, only their nicknames. Years later, while going through puberty or coming of age rituals, the person would receive a name from a deceased ancestor or the family genealogy. The names are thus considered property in belonging to a family. The family would host a potlatch and bestow the new ancestral name on the person. Within present practices, ancestral names are still passed on, but mostly when a family makes the preparations to host the potlatch, and not just when a child begins puberty.